The man behind the wheel looked like he barely belonged in traffic, let alone at the head of a crisis. Shaky hands, thick glasses, a shirt buttoned wrong. So when he blocked a four-lane highway with an old pickup, yelling at strangers to stop, they laughed. Until one driver opened his door to confront him, then froze. Because the trembling man had spoken 5 words no civilian would dare to fake. There's a device under that bus. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. And don't forget to like the video. It was just past 7 a.m. when the townspeople of Ridgeline began their Monday commute. A quiet place, surrounded by hills and timberland. Ridgeline had one highway, Route 14, that threaded the valley like a lifeline. Most folks used it to get to the city, to school, or to the logistics hub 20 miles out. And that's why it made no sense when traffic came to a complete halt near the Maple Creek overpass. At first, people assumed it was construction, then an accident. But as drivers leaned out their windows, honking and grumbling, they saw the reason. An old red pickup, paint sun-faded and bumper half-hanging, parked sideways across both lanes. The driver stood in front of it, palms out, as if holding back an invisible tide. He looked like someone's confused grandpa. And at first, that's exactly what people assumed. Someone called the sheriff, one man said. Looks like he wandered out of the nursing home. Another chuckled. Inside a nearby school bus, 32 children watched with growing curiosity. Their driver, Miss Carla, frowned. She knew that truck. Knew the man, too. His name was Walter Benning. Retired welder. Lived in a one-bedroom off Sycamore Street. Harmless. But he wasn't moving. She opened the bus door and stepped out. Mr. Benning, she called gently. He turned. His face was pale, his chest heaving. Sweat dripped from his brow despite the cool morning. There's something under your bus, he said. You need to get those kids out. Right now. Carla blinked. What do you mean? Walter's voice was calm. Measured. Too calm. I saw a man place a black case under your chassis, just before you pulled off from the station. You sure? Walter looked her square in the eye. I'm sure. Others began gathering, phones in hand, recording. Some laughed. One man muttered about old drunks and morning meds. A younger driver stepped forward, annoyed. Sir, I need to get to work. Move your truck or I will. Walter didn't flinch. If you open that door, I can't guarantee anyone's safety. That's when people stopped laughing. Carla turned and shouted, kids, off the bus. Everyone off, single file, right now. Within seconds, chaos erupted. Children scrambling down steps. Drivers backing up. Someone screamed. Someone else was already calling 911. Walter never moved. He just stood there, between the old pickup and the yellow bus, watching the kids run to safety like someone who'd done it before, when bullets flew instead of words. By the time the sheriff's department arrived, Route 14 had turned into a scene out of a disaster drill. Squad cars boxed off the highway. A bomb squad was en route from the next county. Parents showed up breathless, half-dressed, yanking their children into tight hugs. And in the center of it all stood Walter Benning. Still, silent, unmoving. He'd refused to leave, even after the children were safe, even when ordered. Sheriff Latham, a thick-set man with a calm drawl, knew Walter only in passing. But now, looking into those watery eyes, he saw something that made him uneasy. Walter, he said carefully, I need you to step aside. Let us take it from here. There's pressure, Walter said without turning his head. Far side of the axle. That's where they usually place them. Shaped charge, maybe directional. You send a dog in now, it won't come back. Latham blinked. How in the hell would you? Because I've seen it before, Walter interrupted, voice low. 14 times. The sheriff stepped back. That detail hadn't come from nowhere. Meanwhile, the bomb squad rolled in. A sleek black van, suited agents, robots deployed. As they began to examine the bus from a safe distance, the crowd was ushered farther back. But Walter stayed, only moving when one of the agents approached with curiosity instead of command. Sir, the tech said, I understand you saw something placed beneath the bus? Walter nodded. Small black case. One man. Dark clothing. Hoodie. He moved like he'd done it before. Timed. Careful. He had a switch in his hand. What kind of switch? Thumb press. Non-rigged. It was a manual trigger. The agent raised an eyebrow. Your ex-law enforcement? Walter shook his head. Military. A beat. Then, something like that. Inside the perimeter, the robot rolled under the bus and stopped. The tech watching the monitor tensed. His voice came sharp. Confirmed. Package located. That changed everything. Suddenly, no one was scoffing. Walter was escorted to a secure point near the command post. EMTs tried to check his vitals, but he waved them off. "I'm not the one who needs patching up." One deputy leaned toward another and whispered, "How did he even spot it?" Walter, seated a few feet away, didn't look up. But he answered anyway, "You don't forget the shape of death. Not after it takes something from you." Later that day, news helicopters arrived. Reporters pushed through barricades. Miss Carla, the bus driver, refused all interviews but said one thing off camera. He saw what none of us did, and he didn't even flinch. That evening, while most of Ridgeline watched the footage loop endlessly on television, Walter walked home alone. The same truck that blocked the highway now sat quiet in his gravel drive. He unlocked the door to his small house, stepped inside, and sat at his kitchen table. And from the drawer beside him, he pulled out a folded map with handwritten marks across the Middle East. Next to it, a rusted dog tag. By sunrise the next day, Ridgeline had gone national. Morning news anchors debated whether the town's mystery grandpa was a hero or a paranoid hoaxer. Footage of Walter standing calmly between the pickup and the bus looped on every network. Analysts speculated. Veterans called in. Nobody could agree on one thing: who exactly was Walter Benning? The sheriff's office received over 100 calls, half from reporters, the rest from strangers claiming to recognize Walter from somewhere. A few mentioned Kandahar. Others swore they'd seen him at a base in Kuwait. Sheriff Latham sat behind his desk, the old man's name circled on a yellow notepad. "Run it again," he told Deputy Moore. "We already checked DMV, VA, Social Security. No priors. No records of military service. It's like he exists only as a guy who's paid property tax for 35 years. Latham leaned back. Then how the hell did he know about that device? Moore shrugged. Maybe we should ask him. But when they arrived at Walter's home, he wasn't there. The mailbox still held yesterday's paper. A kettle was warm on the stove. But the man himself had vanished. The sheriff's scut tightened. "Put out a local alert," he said. "Discreet. No lights. If someone like that doesn't want to be found, you won't find him by chasing." Meanwhile, across town, Miss Carla sat in a school counselor's office, trying to process the past 24 hours. "They're calling him the Guardian now," she said, scrolling her phone. "Kids made a TikTok edit. Gave him superhero music." The counselor smiled faintly. "Well, he did save their lives." Carla nodded, then frowned. "But no one really knew him, did they?" Back on Route 14, cleanup crews finished repairs. The bus had been removed. The bomb team had confirmed the device was real and dangerous. Homemade, but with military precision. Designed to injure, the lead tech said. Not just scare. That detail didn't make the news. But it did reach someone watching from a military office in D.C., a man with 3 stars on his shoulder boards and a fading photo of a squadron taped to the inside of his drawer. He picked up a red phone, dialed an old number, and spoke just 2 words. "He's alive." 3 hours later, the Department of Defense placed a restricted inquiry on Walter Benning. No agencies could confirm who initiated it. That night, in Ridgeline, the power flickered once around 2 a.m. In a shadowed alley behind the diner, Walter sat alone, his cap pulled low, watching the town through tired eyes. He held a photo in his lap, a young man in dusty desert camo, holding a child no older than 5. On the back, scribbled in pencil, "One more trip, then I'm done. Promise." He hadn't made that trip, but he had made the promise. And yesterday, he kept it. The next morning, Walter showed up like nothing had happened. Same truck, same pace, same old boots stepping onto the grocery store's cracked sidewalk. But this time, the town stopped. People stared from behind cereal aisles. A teenager froze mid-scan at the register. The manager stepped out from the office, hands twitching nervously with a clipboard he no longer cared about. "Mr. Benning," he said cautiously, "you okay?" Walter nodded once. "Just need cat litter." "Right. Of course." On the left, back aisle. Word had spread fast. The local paper ran the headline, "Mystery Veteran Saves Dozens, Then Vanishes." But what caught national attention was the leaked footage from the bomb unit, a grainy shot of the device under the bus, and Walter's voice saying, "Don't send a dog. That's where they hide them." No one should have known that. But Walter had. And now, Ridgeline wasn't sure what to do with him. Outside, on a bench beneath the post office flag, sat Sheriff Latham, waiting. When Walter exited the store, brown bag in hand, their eyes met. "You and I need to talk," Latham said. Walter nodded. "Then talk." They walked to the diner. Sat in the back booth. Coffee was poured before it was ordered. The waitress didn't ask a thing. Latham leaned in. People are scared. They should be. But not of you. Walter sipped his coffee. Give it a day. That'll change. The sheriff didn't argue. I pulled every database we've got, Latham said. And everyone came up dry. You're not listed anywhere as prior service. Not Army. Not Marines. Nothing. Walter set his cup down gently. I was under a different set of records. You were Black Ops? No, Walter said quietly. I was the guy who picked up the pieces after the Black Ops went wrong. Latham sat back, stunned. I did recovery. Intelligence bleed over. You don't get a name badge for that. Where? Afghanistan. Iraq. Kosovo. Mogadishu. I've been to places that were never named in public. Latham swallowed hard. And now you live in a house with a broken fence and shop for cat litter. Walter's smile was faint, but not bitter. Because after a while, you stopped needing medals to feel useful. The sheriff was quiet for a moment. You saved those kids. Walter didn't reply. Let me ask you this, Latham added. Why now? Why break silence after all these years? Walter looked out the window. The town square shimmered under the rising sun. School buses rolled past. Kids pressed their faces to the glass, hoping for a glimpse of him. I saw a man walk beneath that bus, he said slowly. He moved the same way we used to tight elbows, efficient, no wasted motion. Only one group moves like that without knowing it's visible. Latham whispered, former military. Walter nodded. And if they've turned? I need to know who trained them. If this makes you angry, type respect in the comments section. The sheriff didn't sleep that night. His wife noticed the porch light never turned off. His phone never left his hand. At 6:13 a.m., he called in a favor. Charlie, I need you to run a private scan on discharged personnel trained in route sabotage or field demolition from 1998 to 2008. Anyone near the state border in the last month. Charlie, a grizzled analyst from his Iraq days, didn't ask questions. He just muttered, You finally found him, didn't you? Latham paused. Found who? But Charlie only laughed once and said, I'll send what I find. Meanwhile, Walter sat alone at the town's war memorial. It was a simple marble slab with 6 names etched in black, Ridgeline's only official losses from overseas service. He traced one with his finger. Private Curtis Hale, age 19, killed in 2004, convoy hit near Fallujah. Curtis had been one of his. Walter never told the boy's family that Curtis had stepped in front of a child. That the medal mailed home wasn't just a formality, it was honest, hard-earned sacrifice. And Walter had carried the body out himself. Now he traced the name again and whispered, They're starting to come back. Across the street, a man in a gray hoodie washed from a bench. He never looked directly at Walter, just stared past him, through him, as if marking the spot. Later that day, Latham received a file. He printed it and stared at the names. 2 stood out immediately, both discharged dishonorably, both with demolition backgrounds, both within 60 miles of Ridgeline in the past 2 weeks. And one was missing from his halfway house 3 days before the bus incident. Latham grabbed his keys. At the same time, Walter received a letter slipped under his door. No return address. No stamp. Just 4 words written in tight, military handwriting. You shouldn't have interfered. He burned the letter immediately. But in the fire, old instincts came alive. He began cleaning the house, not of dust, but of traces. Removed framed photos. Wiped down surfaces. Empty drawers. Packed a rucksack with eerie speed. By the time Latham arrived, Walter was already locking his front door. You were followed, Latham said. I know. I've got names. Walter nodded. So do I. He handed the sheriff a napkin from the diner. 3 names scribbled in blue ink. One matched Latham's file. You knew already? The sheriff asked. Walter shrugged. That's the difference between service and surveillance. I don't need satellite confirmation to spot a wolf in a jacket. That night, he didn't go home. He slept in his truck. Not because he feared for himself, but because the war never really ends, only shifts geography. Have you ever misjudged someone, only to realize later they carried more strength than you imagined? How did that change you? Walter's truck idled quietly beneath the bridge on the south edge of town. No lights. No movement. Just the low hum of a man waiting for ghosts. At 3:27 a.m., a silhouette approached, careful, but not cautious enough. Walter watched through a cracked side mirror. The man wore combat boots too clean to belong to any local. Walter slid from the cab without a sound. By the time the man reached the back of the truck, Walter already had the drop on him. I know what you're doing, Walter said. The man froze. And I know you were 3rd team in Doha. 2003. Recon and demo. I saw your unit's scar pattern, the shrapnel limp. Left knee. You don't have proof, the man muttered. I don't need proof, Walter replied. I saw the way you placed that case under the bus. You crouch like a man who's practiced it in 12 different countries. The stranger turned slowly. His face was young but hollow. He grinned without warmth. You think you stopped something, he said. This was just a test. You passed. Walter didn't flinch. I'm not interested in your games. You should be, the man sneered. There's more coming. And not just here. Behind them, 2 more figures appeared. One from behind the rail. Another from under the bridge. Walter had counted on it. What they hadn't counted on was Latham's voice crackling through the air. Step away from him now. The floodlights hit hard, white and sudden. Deputies moved in fast, tactical gear, rifles leveled. The 3 men froze. One reached, and a taser hit him before his hand could find the weapon. Walter didn't move. Latham approached, face unreadable. You really weren't kidding. Walter gave a slight shrug. Didn't survive this long by guessing. As the suspects were cuffed and hauled away, one deputy approached Walter. You're not going to press charges? Walter shook his head. That's your part. Mine's done. But they threatened you. Walter looked him in the eye. They threatened the town. By noon, federal agents had arrived. And not the public-facing kind. These wore suits with blank name tags, spoke in clipped language, and avoided cameras. They asked Walter for a full briefing. He gave them 1 page. They're not foreign, he told them. They're fractured. Leftover pieces from wars we buried too fast. They're building something with experience. It's not politics. It's muscle memory. Payne turned inward. And then he added something that made one agent's jaw tighten. They're recruiting. Especially the discarded ones. Later, the mayor called Walter privately. We're planning a ceremony, she said. Recognition. Walter interrupted, gentle but firm. No ceremony. Just fix the bridge. Sweep the sidewalks. Keep the school buses running on time. She hesitated. Can we at least name something after you? Walter smiled faintly. If you must, name the silence after me. That's where I always felt most useful. Have you ever known someone like that? Someone who carries others quietly, without asking for thanks? Share their story. Because even when the world forgets, we remember. By Wednesday, the national story had started fading. Another scandal. Another market drop. Walter's name slid from headlines like mist off a windshield. But in Ridgeline, the impact hadn't disappeared, it had simply changed shape. The town swept its sidewalks earlier. Bus drivers checked beneath their vehicles now. People waved more, listened longer. Walter was no longer that quiet man in the truck. He was the reason the school still had 32 children laughing in its halls. And yet, he stayed invisible. No interviews. No parades. When the town offered him free meals for life at the diner, he accepted on the condition that no one ever mentioned why. If you need to thank me, he told the waitress, bring coffee, not compliments. At the sheriff's office, Latham printed out one last report from the feds. The threat was neutralized for now. But a line at the bottom chilled him. Assessment, likely more fragmented cells. No leader. Pure ideology. Latham drove to Walter's place that afternoon. Found him fixing a bent flagpole in the yard. You knew this wasn't the end, the sheriff said. Walter nodded. Nothing ever ends. But things do quiet down. You think they'll try again? Walter looked at the horizon. They don't need to. Someone else always picks up where the angry ones stop. Latham handed him a sealed envelope. Inside was a local deed. The town council had voted, unanimously, to rename Route 14's overpass. Benning Bridge. Walter shook his head. I told them no names. It wasn't for them, Latham said. It was for the parents. The kids. People need to believe in something still standing after the storm. Walter sighed. Then it better hold. He paused. Then added, almost reluctantly, there's a kid in town. Works night shift at the gas station. Watches everything. Quiet. Eyes like mine used to be. I'd like to train him. Latham raised an eyebrow. Train him to do what? To watch. To listen. To step between danger and the unaware. Latham nodded slowly. You want him deputized? No. Just noticed. That night, Walter left a folded paper at the station. A single page with 5 columns, 30 names. Dates. Regions. Skills. He kept tabs all these years. Not as a soldier. As a keeper of memory. The final line read. These men were lost. Some never came home. Some never came back inside. But they mattered. If you believe those who sacrificed for others deserve to be honored every day, subscribe to us. where we tell the stories that should have been appreciated long ago. Because quiet heroes never stop serving. On Saturday morning, Walter walked the square just after sunrise. No cameras, no ceremony. Just two on the benches, a soft wind, and that same careful gaze he always carried. Across the street, the kid from the gas station, the one with quiet eyes, nodded once. Walter nodded back. It was enough. Outside the school, a group of children placed paper flowers along the new plaque at Benning Bridge. They didn't fully understand why, but their parents did. At the diner, Sandy poured 2 coffees before Walter even stepped through the door. "It's your table," she said simply. Walter unfolded a paper from his pocket, a name scribbled in fresh ink. Another veteran he'd found. Another man who needed a call before the dark got too deep. He didn't call them brothers. He called them echoes. Because some warriors don't charge forward, they stand quietly in doorways, keeping the noise out. By noon, Walter had returned home. He fed the cat, cleaned his boots, then sat on the porch watching the wind move the trees. A slow, quiet kind of peace. Until a child's voice broke the air. "Hey, mister, were you really in the war?" Walter looked over. The boy wore a cape made from a pillowcase, hands sticky from a popsicle. Walter smiled. "A few, maybe. Did you win?" Walter thought a moment. "I helped people come home. That was enough." Then he tipped his cap, leaned back, and closed his eyes, just for a moment. Because in Ridgeline, thanks to him, the watch was still turning. What moment in your life did justice arrive late but sweet? Tell us below. If you like this story, please like and subscribe to the channel. Let YouTube promote stories of kindness.